How many times have you sought comfort in the presence of others, in the noise of the world, in the distractions that keep you from facing the truth of who you are? The truth is, there's a power found not in the crowds, not in the voices that surround us, but in the solitude, the silence, the moments when it's just you and your soul. The world today teaches us that we must always be with others, that we must always have someone to lean on, to validate us, to define us. But I'm here to tell you that real strength is forged in moments when no one else is around. Strength is not given by the world's applause or the validation of friends. It's earned in the deepest corners of our own hearts, in the battles we fight alone. I challenge you to think for a moment, what if I told you that being alone doesn't make you weak? What if I told you that the solitude you fear, the quiet that makes you uncomfortable, might actually be the very thing that empowers you, refines you, and builds a strength you could never find in the presence of others? In a world that constantly calls for connection, for companionship, for the assurance of others' support, there is a rare and often misunderstood strength that comes from being completely alone. In solitude, we are forced to face ourselves, stripped of the distractions and comforts that we often rely on to mask our weaknesses, and it is here, in the quiet when the world goes still, that we find the opportunity to discover a strength that doesn't depend on anyone else but ourselves. This is where real self-dependence is born. We often think that to be strong we need to lean on others. We rely on friends, family, our communities, our networks to hold us up when we falter. But there comes a time in every person's life when those things fade away, when you are left with nothing but your own resolve. In those moments you are not weak. You are given the chance to find a deeper strength. You are forced to confront your own fears, your own limitations, and what you find in those moments will define the course of your life. When you are alone, you face the harsh reality that no one else can truly live your life for you. No one can carry your burdens, make your decisions, or walk your path. You must do it alone. The beauty of solitude is that it does not allow you to hide behind the facade of dependence. It exposes your heart, your mind, your very soul. You are left to stand before yourself with nothing but the foundation of your own inner strength, and when you do that, when you are forced to face the truth of who you are, you either break or you rise. But the rising is not in the company of others, it is in the battle within. It's easy to believe that strength is about physical power or the ability to overcome external challenges. We often look to others for validation, thinking that our strength is somehow tied to their approval or their support. But real strength, the kind that endures, is not something that is dependent on others. It's something that grows when you are alone, when you are forced to rely on your own convictions, your own faith, your own understanding of what is true. It is in those moments when everything else is stripped away that you find out what you are truly made of. The fact is, being alone does not weaken you. It strengthens you, it refines you. It is when we are alone, when we are disconnected from the noise and distractions of life, that we hear our truest thoughts, confront our deepest doubts, and face the fears that we often run from. It's in those moments that we truly see our need for God and for strength beyond ourselves. And this is where we begin to realize that real strength is not in what we can do on our own, but in what we can endure when we stand before God, trusting in His strength to carry us through. And let's be honest, solitude is not easy, it's uncomfortable, it can be painful, it exposes parts of us that we would rather not face, but it is in these moments of discomfort, in moments of silence and stillness, that we discover who we really are. You see, the world teaches us to avoid discomfort at all costs. It teaches us that we must always surround ourselves with people, that we must fill every moment with activity, with sound, with something, anything, to distract us from the reality of our own lives. But solitude forces us to face what's really inside, and that's where strength is forged. The strength you find in solitude is not the kind that comes from external achievements, not the kind that you can show off or boast about. It's the kind of strength that is built in the hidden moments, in the quiet times when no one is watching, when no one is there to give you praise or approval. It's the kind of strength that stands firm in the face of temptation, in the face of doubt, in the face of fear. And it's a strength that comes from knowing that you don't need anyone else to validate you. You are strong because you've learned to depend on yourself, on your inner resolve, and ultimately on God. There is a power in solitude that you will never experience in the company of others. It's a strength that comes from standing alone, facing the truth of who you are and knowing that you can endure. It's in those moments that you find out what you are really capable of. And when you rise from the ashes of those lonely moments, you stand stronger than you were before. When you embrace the solitude, when you stop running from the silence and stillness, you will find that it is there, in the alone moments, that true strength is built. You may not always like it. It may be uncomfortable, but it is in the quiet that you will become the person you were always meant to be. When you find yourself alone, it's easy to feel abandoned or lost. The world tells us that in isolation we are missing something, that in the absence of others we are incomplete, but let me tell you, there's a deeper, more powerful truth waiting for you in the silence. In the solitude, you have an opportunity to grow spiritually in ways that you can't experience when you're surrounded by the noise of life. It's in those quiet, alone moments that you come face with your inner struggles, your deepest fears, and your greatest longings. And it's in facing them, without distraction or interference, that you can experience true spiritual growth. When you're alone, you can no longer hide from the truth. The noise of the world, the comfort of others, the busyness that fills every waking moment, these things all serve as distractions, keeping you from truly dealing with your soul. But in isolation, you can't run away from yourself. You are left alone with your thoughts, your doubts, your desires, and your weaknesses. And though it may be uncomfortable, it is here in the stillness that you begin to see things clearly. It is in the quietness of solitude that you realize how much you need God. When the world falls silent and you are alone, there's nothing left but you and the Creator. It is in this space that God can begin to speak to you in ways He couldn't when you were distracted by everything else. You start to hear His voice more clearly. You begin to understand His guidance in a way that surpasses any fleeting advice or fleeting counsel that others may offer. In solitude, your heart opens up to the things of God in a way that can only happen when there is nothing else vying for your attention. When you are alone, you are given the opportunity to examine your own heart and life before God. No one else is there to influence you. There's no one else to point fingers at or blame. The truth you find in solitude is raw and real. It's just you and your relationship with God, and this is where growth happens. Spiritual growth isn't always about being surrounded by people who tell you what you want to hear or constantly affirming you. It's about finding yourself alone with God, wrestling with your own heart, and coming to grips with what truly matters. It's in this space of vulnerability that you find your deepest need for Him. You see, in solitude, you're forced to take an honest look at your faith. When the world isn't there to distract you, you realize that faith is not something that can be borrowed from others. It's not about what others believe, it's about what you believe. It's not about relying on the faith of your family, your church, or your friends. It's about standing before God and saying, "Lord, I trust in you." And it's in that moment of trust, when you are alone, that your faith becomes stronger. It's tested in the fire of solitude, and as it is refined, it becomes something real and unshakable. Solitude doesn't just expose your weaknesses, it exposes your spiritual needs. Your hunger for something deeper. In the hustle and bustle of life, it's easy to forget how much you need God, but when you're alone, there's no denying the fact that you were created for a relationship with Him. You were made to seek Him, to depend on Him, to find your strength in Him, and it is in these times of solitude that you come to understand that no amount of human interaction, no amount of distraction, can ever fill the void that only God can satisfy. In the quiet moments, you begin to sense a closeness to God that you might not experience in the busyness of life. When everything else fades away, when you are left to stand before Him in the silence, you start to understand His love in a new way. You see His grace more clearly. You realize that He has been with you all along, even when you were too busy or distracted to recognize His presence. And this realization, this deepened understanding of God's faithfulness, strengthens you in a way that nothing else can. The solitude that we often fear is, in fact, a gift. It's in those times when we are alone with God that we find our faith stretched and deepened. We discover parts of our relationship with God that we never knew existed, and as we come out of those times of quiet, we are changed. We are stronger, more grounded, and more spiritually alive. So don't run from the silence, don't fear the loneliness. It's in the stillness that God speaks most powerfully to our hearts, and it's in those moments that we can grow in our faith in ways we never could have imagined. As we embrace solitude, we don't just discover who we discover who we are in Christ, and in that discovery we find strength, purpose, and spiritual growth that transforms us from the inside out. It's easy to look around and think that strength comes from what we can do externally, from the battles we fight in the world. But the most difficult battles we face are often not the ones that everyone can see. The toughest struggles happen inside of us, when we are alone, without the distractions of the world or the voices of others. We are left to wrestle with our own hearts. We face the inner conflict that most people try to avoid, the silent battle that rages beneath the surface, and it's in this wrestling, in these inner struggles, that we find real strength. When we are alone, we cannot run from ourselves. External noise fades, and we're forced to confront the truth about who we are. We face our fears, our insecurities, our pride, and our deepest doubts. There's no one else around to distract us, to make us feel better about ourselves, or to tell us what we want to hear. We stand before ourselves and God, and we are confronted with the raw, unfiltered reality of who we are. This is not easy, it's uncomfortable, but this is where true strength begins to take root. In those moments you find out what you are really made of. It's easy to think of ourselves as strong when we are surrounded by others, when we have people to lean on, but real strength is not proven in the company of others. It is proven when no one is around, when the world is silent, and we are left to face ourselves. It is in those times of solitude that we can no longer hide behind the image we present to the world. The masks come off, and we are forced to deal with the parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. It's in this confrontation with our weaknesses, our flaws, and our fears that we find out who we really are, and who we can become. The strength that comes from facing our inner battles is the kind of strength that lasts. It is the strength to say no to temptation, to stand firm in what we believe, and to resist the urge to take the easy way out. It's the strength to confront the fears that we hide deep inside, the ones we don't want anyone to see. It's the strength to take responsibility for our actions, to own up to our mistakes, and to strive to be better, even when no one is watching. And it's the strength to keep moving forward, even when we feel like giving up, even when the weight of the world seems unbearable. In these quiet moments of solitude, we learn that strength doesn't come from avoiding our fears or running from our weaknesses. It comes from facing them head on. We learn to look at ourselves in the mirror and recognize the areas where we need to grow. And as we confront these challenges, we are refined. The fear that once held us captive begins to lose its power. The insecurities that once defined us begin to fade, and we find ourselves becoming stronger, not because we've avoided our struggles, but because we've walked through them with God's help and come out on the other side. One of the greatest lessons we learn in solitude is that we don't have to be afraid of our own struggles. We don't have to be afraid of the battles that rage inside of us. These battles are not signs of weakness. They are the proving grounds where real strength is forged. They are the moments that shape us into the people we are meant to be. And it's in these moments that we can experience the power of God working within us, giving us the courage and the strength to face whatever comes our way. When we confront our inner battles, we stop being victims of our circumstances. We stop allowing fear, doubt, and insecurity to control us. Instead, we take responsibility for our own growth and begin to fight back. This is not a fight against others. It's a fight against the enemy within, and it's a fight that we can win. But to win, we must face it head on, and we must do it alone. We must be willing to stand in the silence and wrestle with our own hearts, knowing that it is only through these struggles that we can grow stronger. The battles that we face within ourselves are the ones that truly define us. They shape our character, refine our faith, and build the strength we need to endure. It's not the external conflicts that make us strong, it's the inner battles that prepare us for whatever comes next, and when we emerge from these struggles, we do so as stronger, more resilient individuals, ready to face whatever challenges the world may throw at us. So don't shy away from the inner battles, embrace them, face them with courage, knowing that each struggle is an opportunity to become stronger. And remember, the strength you find in the battle within will always be the strength that will carry you through the storms of life. In the noise and chaos of the world, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. We are constantly bombarded with distractions, busy schedules, endless notifications, the demands of others, and amidst all this, we often forget to stop, breathe, and reflect. Yet, in solitude, when everything quiets down, we're given the rare opportunity to hear what's truly important. It is in the silence that we find clarity. It is in those moments when we are alone, when everything fades into the background, that we can truly hear the calling that God has placed on our lives. When you are surrounded by the noise of the world, you can easily be swept along by the current of other people's expectations, by the pressures of what society tells you is important. The world tells you what success looks like, what happiness looks like, what fulfillment looks like, but none of these things are truly fulfilling. None of them speak to the deeper, more profound purpose that you were created for. It is in solitude, when the world is silent and you are left alone, that you begin to hear what God is calling you to do, the purpose He has laid out for your life. In those quiet moments, the distractions fall away, and you are left with nothing but the truth. You begin to hear God's voice more clearly. It's as if all other voices, voices of the world, voices of doubt, voices of temptation, are drowned out by the still small voice of God calling you to something greater. The purpose of your life, your true calling, can only be fully understood when you are willing to listen in the silence, in the noise of world. We forget to hear that voice, that gentle whisper that leads us on the path of righteousness, truth, and meaning. Too often, we're so busy that we don't take the time to truly listen to what God is saying. We're so caught up in the rush of life that we don't pause long enough to reflect on the deeper questions. But when you find yourself alone, when everything else falls away, you have the chance to ask those questions. Who am I? What is my purpose? What does God want for my life? These are the questions that the world does not answer, but in solitude, in the stillness, you have the opportunity to truly listen and hear the answers that God has been trying to reveal to you all along. This is why solitude is so powerful. It's in the silence that you find your true purpose. It is in the moments when you are alone with God that He can speak to your heart, revealing your calling and your mission. You might not hear it all at once, but the quiet moments allow God to peel away the layers of distraction and confusion that we've built up over time. He starts to show you who you were really meant to be, not who the world has told you to be. And when you begin to understand your true purpose, everything else falls into place. You stop chasing after things that do not matter. You stop living for the approval of others. You stop running from what you were meant to do, and instead you begin to walk in the path God has set before you. When you're constantly surrounded by people, by noise, by activity, it's easy to think you have it all figured out, but being alone forces you to stop and ask yourself the hard questions. It forces you to reflect on your life, your choices, and your direction. It's in these moments of solitude that you find the clarity to align yourself with God's will. You start to see more clearly the areas where you've been drifting, the places where you've been living for something other than His purpose. And as you begin to listen to God in the quiet, you begin to find the strength to make changes, to follow His lead, and to live in alignment with His plan for your life. The distractions of the world are powerful, but the stillness of solitude is where true growth happens. It's in the quiet that you are stripped of everything that is unnecessary, and what remains is the truth of who you are and what you are meant to do. In those moments of silence, you hear God's voice more clearly than ever before. You hear His invitation to step into your purpose, to align your heart with His will, and to follow the path He has laid out for you. It is in solitude that you hear the call to something greater than yourself. So don't fear the silence. Don't run from the moments when you find yourself alone. It is in those moments that you will hear God's voice calling you to your true purpose. It is in those moments that you will gain the clarity you need to walk in the direction He has set for you. The purpose of your life cannot be found in the noise. It can only be found in the quiet. And when you embrace that silence, you will hear the call that God has placed on your life, and you will be empowered to live it out with strength, conviction, and purpose. When we look at our lives, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that everything is about success, achievement, and the accolades we receive from others. We measure ourselves by the standards of the world, by what we accomplish, by how others perceive us, and by how much we accumulate. But there is a deeper truth that the world doesn't teach us, and it's This true strength isn't found in what we achieve in the public eye, but in what we overcome in the quiet when no one else is watching. When you are alone, away from the world's gaze, you come to realize that success isn't measured by the applause of others, but by the battles you've fought and won within yourself. The world teaches us to crave validation. We seek approval from our peers, from our families, from our social circles, because we're conditioned to believe that our worth is tied to what others think of us. We believe that in order to be significant, we must be seen, recognized and praised, but there's a danger in that kind of thinking. It's fleeting, it's conditional, it's shallow. The moment we stop receiving the validation we crave, we begin to question our value, and so we chase after more attention, more affirmation, more praise. But when you are alone, stripped of all the external distractions, you begin to understand that your worth doesn't come from others' approval. It comes from knowing who you are and whose you are. In the solitude of your life, you are free from the judgment of others. You are free from the pressure to conform to societal standards, to live up to anyone's expectations but your own, and more importantly, God's. This freedom allows you to see yourself clearly, without the lens of comparison, without the distortion of outside influence. You begin to see that real worth is not found in what you have or what you've done, but in who you are when no one else is around. In those moments, you discover that your identity is not rooted in the opinions of others, but in the fact that you are created in God's image with a purpose that only He can define. And when you grasp this truth, it changes everything. In the quiet, you begin to realize that you don't need the applause of the world. You begin to understand that the approval of man is temporary, but the approval of God is eternal. When you are alone, you have the chance to wrestle with your own insecurities and fears, and it's in those wrestlings that you begin to develop a deep sense of inner peace and confidence. You realize that your value doesn't change based on your circumstances, your achievements, or the opinions of those around you. Your value is anchored in something far deeper, something that cannot be shaken by the changing tides of life. As you spend more time alone, you start to recognize the areas where you've been seeking validation in all the wrong places. You see how much of your life has been spent chasing after things that don't matter, things that the world tells you are important, but which ultimately leave you empty. Success, fame, recognition, they're all temporary, and once you realize this, you start to shift your focus. You begin to pursue something far greater, a life that is rooted in purpose, in truth, and in the strength that comes from knowing your true worth. This is where real strength is built. It's not strength that comes from impressing others or accumulating accolades. It's the strength that comes from within, the strength to stand firm in who you are, regardless of what anyone else thinks. It's the strength to say, I know who I am, I know whose I am, and I am secure in that. And this strength, the strength that is cultivated in solitude, is unshakable. It doesn't depend on the approval of the crowd, on the recognition of the world, or on the praise of those around you. It is a strength that comes from knowing your worth in Christ and understanding that your value is not determined by external circumstances, but by your identity as a child of God. In solitude, you begin to see that you don't need the approval of others to live a meaningful, fulfilling life. In fact, when you stop seeking validation from the world, you start to live more authentically. You stop pretending to be something you're not, and you begin to embrace who you truly are. And it's in that authenticity that you discover a deeper, more lasting strength. You no longer live for the applause of others, you live for the approval of God. And when you live for His approval, you discover a peace and contentment that the world can never offer. So let go of the need for validation from the world. Let go of the constant chase for recognition and applause. Embrace the solitude, embrace the quiet, and allow yourself to hear the truth that God has been speaking to your heart all along. You are enough, you are loved, you are valuable, not because of what you've done or what others think of you, but because of who you are in Christ. And that truth, that deep understanding of your worth, will give you a strength that no one can take away. There is a deep, profound strength that comes from walking through life in solitude, and one of the most incredible aspects of this journey is the sense of personal responsibility it cultivates within you. In solitude, when no one else is around to guide you or lead the way, you come face to face with the reality that your life, your choices, your actions, they are yours to own. There is no one to blame, no one to point fingers at. It's just you, standing in the quiet of your own heart, confronted by the truth of your life, And this truth can be uncomfortable, yes, but it is also liberating. It's in these moments that you find strength to take ownership of your actions and your future. The world loves to tell us that our problems, our struggles, and our failures are someone else's fault. We point to our circumstances, to the people around us, or to society at large as the reasons we are where we are. But solitude doesn't allow for this. When you are alone, you can no longer avoid the reality that you have a role in your own life. You have a choice in how you respond to the challenges that come your way. You can't pass the blame anymore. You can't justify the decisions you've made or the path you've chosen by casting the blame elsewhere. The truth is, you are responsible for where you are, and you are responsible for where you are going. This realization is powerful. It is in this ownership of your life that true strength is forged. In solitude, you realize that the only person who can truly change your circumstances is you. When everything else fades into the background, when you're no longer distracted by the noise of life, you are left with the stark reality of your own choices. And this is where the power lies. It is here, in this raw, unfiltered truth, that you are empowered to make changes, to grow and to move forward. You no longer wait for someone else to come along and fix things for you. You take responsibility for your own growth, your own healing, and your own journey. This kind of personal responsibility doesn't come easy. It's easy to blame others. It's easy to point fingers and say, if only they had done this, or if only this had happened, I'd be in a different place. But in solitude, you face yourself. You see the areas where you've fallen short, the places where you've made mistakes, and the parts of your life that need healing. And instead of looking outward, you look inward. You ask yourself the hard questions. What have I done to contribute to this situation? How have my choices led me here? What can I do differently moving forward? It's only when you begin to ask these questions that true transformation can occur. Taking responsibility in solitude also means facing the reality of your own limitations. It means acknowledging that you can't do it all on your own. You can't overcome every obstacle by sheer willpower or strength. You need God. You need His guidance, His strength, and His wisdom. But it's only in those quiet, alone moments that you come to understand this. In the busyness of life, it's easy to forget that we need help. We try to control everything, we try to fix everything, and we try to do it all on our own. But solitude strips away the illusion of self-sufficiency. In the stillness, you are reminded that while you are responsible for your choices, you don't have to carry the weight of the world on your own. God is there, ready to help, ready to guide you, ready to strengthen you for the journey ahead. As you begin to take ownership of your life, you also begin to realize the importance of the choices you make. Each day, life is not a series of random events that happen to you. Your choices shape the direction of your life. Each decision you make, no matter how small, contributes to the person you are becoming. In solitude, you gain the clarity to see this truth. You begin to understand that every action, every thought, every word carries weight, and with this understanding comes the strength to make better choices. Choices that align with your values, your faith, and your purpose. When you embrace personal responsibility, you stop living in a passive way. You stop waiting for life to happen to you. You start taking proactive steps to shape your future, to grow spiritually, and to live with intention. You become an active participant in your own life, fully aware that you are the one who has the power to make a difference. In solitude, you are given the space to reflect on the decisions that have brought you to this point, and you are given the opportunity to change the course of your life. You are no longer at the mercy of circumstances. You are the one who gets to determine your future. The strength that comes from personal responsibility is not just about owning your mistakes. It's about owning your future. It's about recognizing that the path ahead is yours to walk, and that the choices you make today will determine the person you become tomorrow. In solitude, you are given the opportunity to take responsibility for your growth, your healing, and your transformation. And with that responsibility comes a strength that is built from within, a strength that is rooted in the understanding that you are in charge of your own life, and that with God's help you can overcome anything.